Okay, well actually I'm going to get started, and I think folks will have a chance to join us a little bit after if they're running behind. Thanks for joining us today it's actually the second part of our Mergers and Acquisitions webinar series, Effective Archiving Strategies. We did our first one in last month in May. We focused that one on migration center and consolidation of ECM systems. So today we'll talk about archiving strategies. It's for the topic's mergers and acquisitions, but it actually pertains to any organization, so folks can listen in even if they're not in an M&A situation. So today the webinar is in listen-only mode. You'll have the opportunity to send questions through the chat at the end of the session, and we will answer them accordingly. The session is being recorded, so you'll be able to view it again or share with your colleagues. And our agenda for today, we will do an FME introduction. We'll talk a little bit about and cover the challenges of mergers and acquisitions a little bit, but mainly talking about archiving. So we'll cover EMC InfoArchive with an overview and a Migration Center overview. So I'm Larissa Primavera, Director of Sales for FME US, and Frank was kind enough to join us today to present. He's the president of our FME US team. So Frank, with that, I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Larissa, for the background and for the intro. So we'll dive into the topics today. So again, my name is Frank Dentrone. Larissa set me up here, but I'll give you a little background of myself. So I've been with FME since we founded FME here in 2010, but I have quite a long history with on content management or enterprise content management, in particular around the EMC or the documented portfolio. So towards the end, when we get some questions, hopefully, I could certainly field a variety of them if there's any. But I'll give you a little background about FME and who we are. We support our clients in what today's day we're calling digital transformation, and especially in life sciences, industrial manufacturing, and we also cover other industries, predominantly in the technical area, like technical consulting, but our main focus or main lanes of operation from a business perspective or business consulting is life science and industrial manufacturing. But within our portfolio of our consulting services or professional services, we do focus heavily on ECM, but also business intelligence, cloud computing, big data, social collaboration, and we also do quite a bit around mobility or mobile app or custom development if there's any interest there. But our main focus is around consultation. We focus in planning, development, rollout, so pretty much cradle to grave, initiatives, projects, consultation, things of that nature. So FME's been around for quite some time, was founded in 1995, so has a long history in the ECM space. We're about 175 employees and growing, and we have offices throughout Germany as well as here in the States, and we do have an office in Romania as well. And we always say, it's FME you love to work with, and we do believe that because in this space it's all about trust, credibility, and relationships. So that's the nature of the consultation. So a little brief snapshot of customers or clients that we work with in the various vertical areas or industries. I'll just give you a chance to kind of peek over that. But again, a lot of what we do in the consulting space from a business perspective is in life science and industrial manufacturing, but we do provide quite a bit around ECM, upgrades, migrations, and things of that nature in the other industries. So that's just a little synopsis or summary about FME, just to give you a feeling of who we are. But the main topic for today, as Larissa had mentioned in the intro, is around M&A, mergers and acquisitions, archiving strategies. So this is really the essence of why we're here today. And with that said, companies, we're actually heavily involved in a variety of M&A activities, both from a business point of view and technical, so we can definitely share our experiences, but there's quite a bit of movement in the market because of the nature of the market, and companies have challenge where they're trying to manage an enterprise application portfolio. So even without M&A activity, it's a challenge. So when you start to look at, large company acquires medium to large company, now that challenge doubles. And so harmonizing and consolidation and archive become much more apparent, or the necessity for it or for those work streams to be chartered become much more apparent. And what does that really mean? So from a portfolio, an application portfolio, what are the things that you're trying to meet, or what are the challenges you're trying to accomplish or to mitigate? Ease of reducing your total cost of ownership is one element. You have being able to scale, at an enterprise level, applications. Also meet, most of the companies we work with or companies that invest in this type of ECM or archive type of technology typically have compliance requirements, so that's always, pretty high on the list. And the other two items, ease of access, because of sort of the modern day, you want to have information at your fingertips, so having that being able to easily access information is critical, and covering the variety of application types, CRM systems or classic content management applications. There's a variety of application types, that are part of this whole portfolio. So with that said, kind of segues into, well, what's the next level of challenge, when you start to peel it back and you start looking at, the types of the type of information, these enterprise organizations are trying to deal with. You have a variety of ECM systems in many cases, Decommissioning being one, that's an area we focus heavily on, but you have OpenText, FileNet from an ECM perspective. You have other, applications or historical application. You have IBM, Mobius, and others, so I'm not going to read them all off. But you start to look at the landscape and where all of the information silos are located. This is where, you take an M&A situation and this starts to compound, right? And decisions need to be made. How are you going to sustain, how are you going to manage that portfolio that we mentioned earlier? How are you going to, what are you going to consolidate? What information is relevant and active, and what information is still important from a compliance perspective but not active, could slot into an archive situation. So again, the main spirit of our talk today is looking at data from an M&A perspective and how you can, charter, a strategy in terms of storing information where it should be stored from an archive perspective, and in parallel, how do you harmonize, streamline, save money in the end. I mean, at the end of the day, it's having, keeping your costs down for, to invest that money into more innovation objectives. So here's a model for continuous improvement. So this high level, I'm going to kind of step into each one of these sections in follow-up slides. But the main area from an M&A perspective in archive is, cost takeout. So drive costs out of your existing IT environment. So take, data that you have, you have an investment on an application, a set of applications, and you're investing in that operational cost year over year. But at the end of the day, you're just keeping the lights on because of compliance reasons. You need to preserve the data, and the current situation is keep the system alive so we have access to the information. So the first step is, what can you do to, if you take that information and archive it and you do a cost takeout, you start to save money in this area and being able to invest that money into innovation, new innovation. So that's the first step. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a follow-up slide. The next one is optimize. So this is more around pruning or keeping your active day-to-day application environment lean. And there's a number, I have a few bullets that'll summarize what that means. And last is re-envision, is put your information to work. So how can you leverage the information that you've collected over the years to benefit you for the future, for your future investments and strategies? So leveraging the data that you currently have. And take that from an M&A perspective. You have two companies that have a portfolio, a product. Think of a product could be, you know, software, or it could be something that you're selling, and you have information that you can glean out of both that, you know, from an M&A perspective. You have data in the current company, you have data coming in from your M&A activity. How can you take those two data silos, or the various data silos, and bring that together and glean some insights out of that information that's been locked up for a number of years? So when you talk about cost takeout, you have, you know, the targets. You have legacy platform issues that don't apply. So you have outdated server, legacy systems, you know, both infrastructure, application, and software, right? So all three of these have cost implications. There's no special maintenance know-how needed, you know, safe adherence to compliance regulations. So when you take this application and you archive it, and you know, the cost takeout is all of the savings that you glean from that cost takeout. You can, you know, take that IT investment, or those dollars, and leverage that for innovation. So the solution is to, you know, saving information, both metadata and content, into a unified archive, and we're going to talk more about that from an EMC InfoArchive perspective. The next step is optimize. So using that central archive to relieve the active applications. So this is what I said earlier, keeping your primary applications lean. So making more efficient use of, so lean being data, you know, both data volume as well as usage, day-to-day usage. So, you know, having, you know, the footprint, as you start to grow in sort of data volume, you know, it starts to impact, you know, utilization, you know, the infrastructure, storage, things of that nature. So part of keeping that system lean, you get benefit on your existing active applications. And also simplification of future migrations. So if you have X amount of terabytes in your active system and you're able to archive, let's say half or a large sum of it, when you start to upgrade that application environment, you know, patching and updates, you know, because it's a living system, having that system lean has a benefit, you know, the side effect to a benefit would be, you know, for those updates, upgrades, and patching. So there's some side benefits in addition to just pure cost. The next would be re-envision. So all of your data, you know, in a unified system. So you have a centralized location for all of your business information. So this would enable you to have accessibility in a central location that's quick, you know, easily accessible. And, you know, data visible or available to you through one interface. Another benefit. Combining data is possible. So now that you have data together in a unified archive, you can enrich your applications. So you can look at certain dimensions of data. So if you're a pharma or life science company and you want to know something about, you know, what trials took place for this product or this therapy. So having all that data in one centralized location, you can start to run intelligent queries against that information to glean, you know, business insights. I mean, this is the main reason for that. So providing a new and information services from an IT portfolio perspective as well, and you can have, as I said, comprehensive analysis against that data set. So now I'll talk a little bit more specifically about InfoArchive for those who may not be too familiar with it. So hopefully you'll get some knowledge out of this session. So we'll touch on it, but if there's questions, please, you know, raise them towards the end of the session, and we'll field them. So InfoArchive, you know, touching on the different elements that I mentioned in the earlier slide. So we're kind of matching, you know, what I said earlier to now bridging that to what that means from an InfoArchive perspective. So we'll touch on these in the next coming slides. So some benefits, you know, ease of access. So, you know, think of it from, you know, C-level perspective or leadership, executive leadership, the ease of access. So being able to provide more services, you know, to, you know, the variety of lines of business within the company, you know, with existing infrastructure. You know, this is a benefit. So having ease of use or accessibility to a much more richer data set has significant business value. Covering all, you know, a variety of application types. So instead of running and maintaining, you know, maintaining X number of applications, you have and you only have to take care of that unified archive, which contains all of that business information, at least from an archive perspective, in one location. So you don't have to log into these various, applications to glean information or insights out of that data. You can have this all in a unified, location or an archive. So there's significant benefit and value to that. As always, compliance seems to find itself towards the top of the list in many cases, depending on industry, of course. But compliance guidelines can be met more easily as less systems are in place. So now you have all of your information in one unified archive. Now you can enforce true records management or retention or records retention or series on your data, which in many cases you need to follow your retention schedule, and it's as important to keep the information as it is to dispose the information. So based on policy, many companies I work with, they struggle with disposition. So this is something that's crucial for all organizations, regardless of M&A, but M&A starts to surface it even more. So being able to offer simple systems to those various lines of business, to meet compliance, sales and management, things of that nature, field sales. So it's a variety of benefits when you talk about compliance, and records retention being one of those aspects. Scale. So as data growth, data growth is not a problem anymore today, and despite of that continuous growth, new data needs to be stored and archived. So you need to have a highly performant system that stands up to the challenges. So being able to scale is critical. So scale meaning horizontally, vertically, being able to manage that information, search, being able to archive it and search it in a performant way is crucial. And at the end, how do you reduce your total cost of ownership? So again, part of that cost takeout, that unified approach for archive. So implementing that unified archive, is able to limit, or minimize the budget allocation for, operating the application. So keeping the lights on for those legacy applications has a significant cost in many cases. So being able to, carve that off, archive it, preserve the data, and say, in many cases the ROI is very easy to calculate. You have X investment to keep the lights on for those legacy applications. You have a cost to archive, and then you have year-over-year, savings once you doing the calculation. So the ROI calculations are quite clear when you talk about, decom and getting that cost takeout. So by decommissioning those legacy applications, you free up that budget, which you can invest in those innovative or innovation projects that have been on hold for a variety of years. So really getting you to the next level of digital transformation. So now we'll jump a little deeper into InfoArchive. So application decommissioning, and sort of the tagline is leave no application data behind. This is the key. So you need to preserve your data and retire those legacy applications. So reducing IT complexity, optimize your infrastructure, ensure the compliance, and information reuse. These are the main aspects of archiving. So you have application decommissioning and active archiving. These are the two main themes when you start to think about a unified archive. And before I go here, there's a variety of products on the market, as you can imagine, but I could tell you InfoArchive is one of the unique ones where it comes down to managing both structured and unstructured data. So InfoArchive has that ability to manage both types, or even semi-unstructured. So when you look at archiving options, kind of segues nice into this slide, you have table-based archiving, which really takes your current application. If you have a database application that's strictly a structured data in a relational database, InfoArchive has that ability to pull or ETL that table data into the archive, stores that into an XML structure, and then you're able to, search and retrieve, intelligent results based on the data set. There's relationships between your data modeling that's built into the archive for consumption. So it enables you to do those more flexible ad hoc queries and reporting. This is an ideal situation for app decom for those structured apps, and it future-proofs your data access. So that's table-based archiving. Then you get into data and record archiving. There's connectors, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, from FME's perspective with our Migration Center product. But there's a variety of data sources. So for data record archiving requires a connector to connect to those data sources, and it enables you to archive structured data and being able to present data as single records. So ideal for compliant archiving. And this is also useful in, for active archiving and app decom. So data record archiving option is another one that we see heavily in the marketplace as a use case. File archiving, so here you have, unstructured data, content sitting on network shares or other locations, or in sync and share environments for that matter. So being able, you want to be able to pull in that data sitting in those unstructured locations. Again, this requires a connector, which I'll highlight a little bit when I get into on the FME Migration Center slides. But this enables you to perform active archiving, app decom from an unstructured perspective. So file archiving is another, again, highlight from InfoArchive perspective. It's not just structured data. And then you have where you have this hybrid record archiving, where it does, again, require a connector. It enables you to archive unstructured and structured data. For example, in our case, we're able to support Lotus Notes. So it has both structured and unstructured data. eRoom is another one. Historical ECM repository would be another, where you don't require to archive all of the data. You need to pull certain pieces of metadata and the relationships to other pieces of metadata and the content. So think of that as a hybrid record, and having the associations between. This is hybrid record archiving. So here we have, from an enterprise archiving solution, you have your legacy applications, which I had mentioned are sitting in read-only mode. We can leverage Migration Center to pull that data out from those legacy applications, store them into InfoArchive, with the appropriate relationships and metadata, so you can increase your application performance from your active applications. You can reduce your storage costs by storing your data from your active applications into archives. So there's typically lower tiered storage costs when you look at archive, and also your active data goes down. So typically, when you start to look at active systems that are in terabytes, it imposes a lot of, let's say, trying to think of a good word for it. It puts some restrictions on your backup ability. So when you look at systems that are very active and are very large in terms of content, the backup systems in the marketplace have a challenge. So by reducing that footprint of content and data in their active applications and storing that into the archive, it minimizes that exposure from a backup perspective, or SLA from a backup and recovery point of view. So there's some benefits in the overall portfolio that you can glean when you're leveraging an archive or unified archive approach. So again, infrastructure and storage, there's data growth and IT costs. So you want, data growth has gone up, and you want to have your IT costs and investments go down. And this is where, you have your unified archive, you have data access, compliance covered, and then you have your different lines of business and customers, having access to that information in the archive. So benefits of InfoArchive, it's based on open standards, OASIS or OAIS. Most people call it OASIS, but this is the exact name. You can Google that and look it up. It's an open standard for long-term archiving. Having a central and compliant archive system covering all your requirements, so it enables companies to store, a variety of application data in a single unified archive. M&A being a major area that kind of bubbles this up even more when you start to look at, variety of applications in large organizations, so ERP, CRM, DMS systems. So this is definitely a benefit when you start to look at a future state application portfolio with an archiving strategy. So connectors, there's a variety of them. FME supports some, but there's other connectors on the marketplace in addition to what FME is providing. So that's, again, that connector portfolio is evolving. And then business drivers from SAP, and there's an SAP connector as well that is available. EMC just announced. So companies that are have a significant investment in SAP typically have archiving requirements. So this is another area that InfoArchive can show benefit to the organizations that have invested in SAP. And then there's a variety of APIs that you can use to enrich your application portfolio to leverage the data stored in your unified archive. So there's REST APIs, there's JDBC APIs, and also companies that are looking at big data initiatives or data lake initiatives, having this InfoArchive or unified archive approach. And there's a couple of techniques you can actually expose. Actually, EMC storage has the ability to expose the data as a Hadoop file system, which is pretty cool. So you can really do big data, perform big data or paths or queries against the unified archive. And that's something that we're starting to see more and more use cases coming up. So active versus inactive content. This slide's been around for a little bit, but it's so true. 60 to 80% of data in operational is typically inactive. Give or take the percentages, but there's the lion's share of data that I see, even in the customers that I'm dealing with, is inactive. It's there, it's useful, but it's not changing. It's there for historical reasons and there for compliance reasons. This information really is a sweet spot for an archive. So what are the challenges for data migration and archive? So we're going to talk specifically about archive, but there's others, that we position when we're talking with our customers around data migration. But for this topic today, we're talking through archiving situation. So archiving documents from a variety of systems, EMC to EMC InfoArchive, decomming applications to the InfoArchive. Also email, archiving emails to either Documentum or InfoArchive or a combination thereof, depending on your use cases, and then being having a side benefit on the backup and recovery, having your data located in your archive, using, not having to require conventional backup means. So solution overview. So I'm just going to talk briefly about it. So Migration Center, which is an FME product that we offer in the marketplace. It's 10 years old. Actually, its birthday was, I think, this past year. So it's quite mature. We do have, for the sake of this topic today, we have an InfoArchive adapter. So anything that you can imagine that we can collect on the source, repositories and applications, we could run through Migration Center and ingest that data into InfoArchive. And that's the main theme that I want to bring to the table, is that if you could think of any unstructured or semi-unstructured data that's sitting within your organization, we can cover those use cases. We can consume that information, migrate that to InfoArchive, and also maintain synchronization, deltas. We can look for data changes and pull over the changes as well as part of a cutover strategy if necessary, or for that matter, active archiving. That's a classical active archiving use case, which I'm going to cover a little bit. I have a couple of slides on that. So here, where we see our unique selling proposition, our USP, if you will, is that with Migration Center, we could disseminate. So you have a variety of source systems that are in the application portfolio. We're able to consume that data through Migration Center, and based on business rules, that we would talk through with our customers, we can make a determination. We could say, okay, all this data is active, and these are the reasons why, and we can build rules for that. And that would go into your ECM repository or consolidated ECM repository. If you think about M&A, you have a future state roadmap for ECM technology, regardless of what that is. We're able to push that information to that active, ECM future state repository for the active content. And for data that's inactive, or if you will, decommissioning or archive slated documents or data, we can push that to InfoArchive. So we can make those determinations with business rules through Migration Center. And here it kind of shows you graphically what that means. You have your applications. This is a straight up decom situation. So you have, for example, a bunch of Lotus Notes databases or eRoom, what have you. We're able to consume that data, transform it into a format that is ingestible by InfoArchive. So that's pretty much what an app decom use case would look like at the highest level. The next use case would be you have migration and decom. So this is where you're consolidating repositories, from your source. Your two companies have, company X has ECM systems 1 and 2, and company Y has ECM systems 3 and 4, and the future state is ECM system 5. So ECM system 5 would be the future state, and the 4 systems or repositories would then be consolidated, and decision points could be made, and this goes into the active repository, the future state ECM roadmap technology, and all the other data goes into the archive. And lastly, you have active archiving. SAP is probably an easy one to explain. You have a bunch of transactional data with content, invoices, or debit checks and memos, things of that nature that's incrementally needs to be archived day over day. So to thin out your ERP system, this is a classic example for live archiving. And there's others. You might have a Documentum repository that would fall into the same scenario. Again, data coming out of your active applications repository, storing that actively in an archive for the reasons that I had mentioned earlier. And lastly, I want to mention we offer, from a FME perspective, Migration Center as what we're calling the CMA, or Content Migration Appliance. So it's a virtual or physical appliance. It's a way we packaging of our software. I just wanted to highlight that in this slide, and if there's any questions, we can field them towards the end. And I think we're towards the end of the slides. Here we have some package offerings. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to us, but we can set up a demo. We can also provide small little work package if you needed it, where we could do some analysis and kind of guide you through this, all of the information that I summarized today in a more condensed fashion. So we offer a small little work package that we offer to our customers that want to kind of start some investment in this area. And there's some additional implementation packages that can be done as a follow-up to that. And that actually concludes the session today, or the slides. And we're going to open it up for any questions that there may be from the folks on the line. So Larissa, I don't know if you want to take over, if you will, and see if there's any questions. And we also have this recorded, so as you mentioned earlier, this will be available for people for those who couldn't attend, they can listen to the recording.
Sure, yes. Thank you, Frank, so much. That was a great presentation, very informative. If there are any questions, you can feel free and send them to the chat, and we will answer them accordingly. I also wanted to make mention that we have the third part of this series coming up in the beginning of August on ad lib classification. We'll get that invite out probably in the next couple of weeks, so you'll see that coming over.
Yeah, I think we were going to plan for a demo in this session, but we weren't sure if there would have been enough time. But for those who are, a follow-up could be a demo where we can show you some scenarios like a file system, path archive, or a documentum to InfoArchive. We can set up some one-on-one sessions with whomever would need it, where we can walk you through some of the use cases that I've presented today.
Yeah.
That could be a follow-up for folks on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have any questions coming in. I guess it was information overload today, Frank.
Possibly. It's a lot of information, so that's fine. I think when people have a chance to reflect on today's session, you might have questions will likely come up. So no problem on our end. If you have any questions, my email and Larissa's email is on the first slide, or you can reach out to info@fme-us.com. So if you have any questions or inquiries on anything related to migration, archive, anything in that matter, M&A, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'd love to have a dialogue with you.
Okay, so I think we can end it from there. Thanks again, Frank. It was a great presentation.
Okay, thanks everyone for your attendance. Have a good day and evening.
Thank you.